What's going on, guys? John Kelly here, and today we're talking all about reasons why people quit backpacking after just one trip. And the very first reason for that is pretty simple. They're unfamiliar with their gear. Now, I've said this a million times on this channel. I've said it in other videos. Before you get out on trail, you need to familiarize yourself with your gear as best you can, especially your tent, your sleep system, and your backpack. You need to know how to set that tent up, set it up in such a way that it can handle rain and wind and just weather in general. Understanding the most comfortable way to sleep in your sleep system is so important because sleep is so important. And the third part being how to use your backpack. What is the best way to pack it so the weight is distributed properly on your back so that you're more comfortable when hiking, so it's easier to find the gear that you need when you need it while you're hiking, so that when you get to camp you're not having to dig around to find things, you know where everything is. Being unfamiliar with your gear when you get out on trail will make the trip so miserable, and you'd be surprised how many people, just from dealing with that, don't want to go back out hiking again. Reason number 2 why people get off the trail and never go back is simply not being able to keep up with the other people in their group. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily hiking, although that could be part of it, but it's more about the setup and teardown type things. There's nothing worse than being the last person set up. And then there's nothing worse than being the last person tearing down. When you feel like you're constantly being waited on, it can be really embarrassing, it can be really frustrating, especially if it's taking you a lot longer than everybody else. Everything from filtering water, to setting up your gear, to tearing down your gear, to packing your pack takes time. And when it takes you a little bit longer than it takes everybody else, sometimes that can be frustrating. And there are a lot of people who really don't like being that person, and a lot of times that can cause someone to not want to do it again because they don't want to deal with the embarrassment of being the person that's holding up the group. Getting familiar with your gear actually helps with the next one. So being able to understand how your gear works, how to pack and unpack your bag, practicing setting up and tearing down your tent, practicing setting up and tearing down your sleep system. All these things are things that if you practice when you get out into the backcountry, it's not nearly as difficult. You may be somebody who you haven't hiked a lot, so the hiking may take a little bit longer also. Don't let that stuff stop you from continuing to get back out there. The next reason why backpackers will quit after one trip is just for the simple fact they bring too much gear. And by too much gear, I mean they bring extra water, they bring extra food, they bring extra clothing, bring extra gear, because we're living in this mindset of I'm gonna die in the woods. When you've never been out in the woods before, you've never gone on a backpacking trip, it can be intimidating. The problem is if you let that intimidation get to you, you're carrying 60 pounds on your back now instead of what could be closer to 30. And that's a lot of extra weight, especially if you're hiking miles. There are so many videos all over YouTube that talk about this. I've done videos on this. Look up those videos. Check out what people are taking out into the backcountry and see if it's what you need or if it's what you don't need. Get someone to go through your pack with you. That's a vital piece of information that could really help you out before you get on trail. Reason number 4 why people quit backpacking after one trip is they just couldn't sleep. I think we've all been there. We've all been on that first trip where honestly we just didn't sleep well. I know for me, when I take a long week-long trip, usually the first night is my absolute worst night of sleep. I've just been traveling all day, I'm excited to be out there, and I haven't slept in the woods for maybe a few weeks or a month, and I get in my hammock or my tent, and I just can't sleep. I toss and turn, and I just don't get the rest I need that first night. If you're somebody going out for the first time, chances are it may be days before you really get comfortable sleeping out in the woods. And that's okay, that's a first trip, that's what happens. Learning how to dial in your sleep system is something that actually takes some time. If you're a tent camper, it's understanding the kind of pad that's most comfortable for you and how much air to have in it. Finding a pillow that's actually comfortable to sleep in. If you're a hammock camper, it can take a little bit longer because it's understanding angles and the hangs and where your feet need to be in comparison to your head, where the sweet spot is in your hammock. Are you a side sleeper? Do you sleep on your back? It's always tricky to learn how to sleep in the backcountry, and you'd be surprised how many people just call it quits after the first trip because they can't figure it out. The next reason why people will quit backpacking after one trip is taking on too many miles. You'd be surprised how many people go out thinking they can conquer the world and hike 15 miles on their first backpacking trip, only to find themselves getting halfway up the trail, finding a campsite, camping out, getting out the next day and saying forget it and going home. It happens more often than people want to admit, but it's just simple. If you've never been backpacking before, you may have hiked for a long time, but until you've put a backpack on your back and you started hiking miles, you don't know what exactly you can handle. So it's really smart when you first get into backpacking that when you get out on the trail, you do like a quick overnight, 2, 3, 4 miles to camp, and then hike back out the next day. And then the next time, let's add maybe 3 or 4 more miles. Let's see how we do. Find that sweet spot of what you can handle and then go from there. You can get those big miles, but it doesn't come right away. And if you try to do it from the beginning, it may discourage you to the point where you just don't want to go out anymore. And that is not what we want to see happen. So what about you guys? What are some reasons that you've seen why people won't get on the trail after just one trip? Leave those in the comments below, and if you like the video, give it the thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you find out anytime one of these videos are dropped. And until next time, stay strong, hike long, and I will catch you on the next go-round.